particulars about paying back student loans. It's a very important subject matter for me. I usually meet with all of the graduating students each year, but of course, due to COVID restrictions, I am at home in my son's bedroom. So here we are. We'll make the best of it. It is very important that you get this information, and so I'm so pleased you were able to stay with me today and go through this. Next slide, please. Today's agenda will be tips and tools of the trade, as I call it. Hopefully I'll give you some things that you did not know or did not know to do while we're meeting together. Little things that you should do that I'd like you to do to protect you, to protect your credit. It's very, very important. As you know, credit is extremely important in the industry today. You're going to be buying a house, you'll be getting mortgages, you'll be buying a car, etc. So we do want to make sure that you know what the do's and don'ts are in student loan repayment. Understanding the terms and conditions of the types of loans that you've borrowed. We're going to talk about being savvy, making smart decisions. If you've got a bundle of money, what to do with that bundle of money and how to do it, how to pay back a student loan quickly, if you can and are able to do so. We're going to talk about student loan forgiveness options. Of course, that's critical for all of you in this group. We're going to talk about consolidation. It's not a huge topic anymore. It comes and goes. I've been doing this actually for 21 years here at BC, and I've seen consolidation peak, and I've also seen it go down into the valley. So this is not a big consolidation time period, but we will go over the particulars of that, of course. And also refinancing student loans. If you have private loans, what do you do with those? Because they're quite different than federal loans. So we'll pretty much hit all of it. If we can get to it, I'm hopeful we can. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of a daunting figure. I looked this up recently to update this PowerPoint. $1.71 trillion is in student loan debt. And I do feel from my research that even exceeds credit card debt. I'm not sure about COVID and its impact on our credit cards. People have had to make do. People have no jobs. All kinds of things have been happening naturally due to COVID. So I am still daunted by the 1.71 trillion takes up student loan debt. It's just absolutely daunting. So next slide. So the critical website that I really want you to know about is the Student Financial Services website, which is a federal website, FSA. And you've probably been there at some point. You applied perhaps for a Graduate Plus loan because you're grad students. If you needed one, you would have had to log in with your FSA ID, and you would have to identify yourself and apply for your Grad Plus. You'd have to sign your master promissory notes on this website. So chances are you've probably been to this website. It's studentaid.gov. And beyond just doing those task-oriented things, it has a plethora of information. And this is an official government website by the Department of Education. So whenever you go to this website, you are getting correct and official information. I always tell students, don't ask your neighbor, don't ask your next door neighbor or your roommate what to do about your student loans. Get your information from a trusted source. The government obviously is a trusted source, and you want to make sure that you log in and research. There's a million different drop-down menus that you can look at to solidify for you the information that you need when paying back loans. And one of the things that they have out there for you is all of the loans that you've borrowed, all of the federal debt. Does not include your private debt, but it does include all of your federal debt. What do I mean? Is it just the Boston College loans you borrowed? No, it's going to include all of your debt. If you had undergraduate federal loans, they definitely will be listed out there in FSA. You want to look up and see, obviously the total that you've borrowed, but also what kinds of loans you've borrowed. We're going to talk today about direct Grad Plus and direct Stafford loans. And a little bit, we're going to touch upon Perkins loans. You may not have had a Perkins loan at Boston College. I do want to touch upon that type of loan because it is federal. And also you may have had a Perkins loan in your undergraduate experience at some other university. Doesn't matter what university you borrowed from, it's going to be out there on studentaid.gov, federal student aid website. Okay, next slide. When you log in to this website, which I encourage all of you to do at some point, again, remember you need your FSA ID to legitimize yourself out on that website before it will give you private information, of course. So it's going to make sure you are who you say you are. When you get to there, for your Stafford, direct Stafford loans, unsubsidized and subsidized, and your Perkins loans, well, for Stafford and Grad Plus, Grad Plus, you want to make sure that you find out who the servicing company is. In general, if you have loans from undergrad, and let's say you borrowed from a company called Nelnet, or in this case, on the PowerPoint, you can see the word Great Lakes. These are servicing companies. There are over 65 servicing companies which do this job. They bill and take in your money for the government. So they're working on behalf of the government. They've received government contracts to take up this task. So you want to make sure that you know who your servicer is. The reason why is if you're not recognizing that and they send you an email, you're like, who's this guy? Is this guy scam? Is this some kind of phishing expedition? You want to make sure that you know who your servicer company is. And in general, it will be the same for your Boston College loans as it was for your undergrad loans. So if you had this company in my example, Great Lakes, as your servicing company for undergrad, you will also have them for graduate. Next thing I would like you to do is once you find out who your servicer is, make sure that you go into your own computer and make that servicing company part of your trusted sites. That way their emails will not be blocked or categorized as spam or junk. You want to be able to receive any communication from your servicing company. This particular company, Great Lakes, is also a hot tub company. I happen to know that because I have a hot tub out on my patio from Great Lakes. So you can see that if they're trying to email, they may be considered to be a promotion or something by Gmail or your email servicer, and they may stick it somewhere else and you will not get the information that you need. So make your servicing company, whoever it is, part of your trusted sites. Then I'd like you to take that and log in. Log into greatlakes.com, nelnet.com, fedloans.com, or whoever your servicing company is. When you go in and log into their domain, you want to make sure that you check all your demographic information. Make sure that you've updated everything, your current address. And as you move around the country and take different jobs or move, make sure you've updated it and keep it updated. Log in and get yourself a PIN and password to your servicing company. In this example, I'm using Great Lakes. Make sure that you can get into your own account. Once in there, as I said, update everything, specifically your email address. You may not have the same email address as you did when you were an undergrad, for instance, but now you want to update it. Make sure, because you want them to contact you through email. That is the primary reason for doing this. Also, sign up. There's a place where you can check off, I would like to be involved in e-billing. You don't want paper today. Paper gets lost, especially if you move from state to state for your job or you're traveling. This way you can stay up electronically through e-billing, and they all have the ability to do this e-billing for you. So those are the three things I'd like you to make sure that everything's up to date. They can get a hold of you with information. For instance, the government currently has you in suspension. I'm sure you're all aware of that. We'll talk about that. Right now, both President Trump and President Biden have suspended the repayment of student loans that are owned by the federal government. That excludes a Perkins loan. Perkins loan is not currently suspended. It covers your direct Grad Plus and it covers your subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford. So that's important to know. But as information trickles out, the servicing company may certainly want to reach you to let you know what to do, when to resume billing, how much your payment's going to be, etc. They will actually notify you during your grace period, which you haven't even gotten into yet, several times during the grace period. And finally, they'll tell you what your monthly installment will be. So it's very important to keep an open communication between the servicing company and yourselves. This is certainly in your best interest to do. Next slide, please. Heartland ECSI. Well, they've caused a lot of confusion. I know you were confused. Believe me, I was confused and very dismayed. We've used Heartland ECSI to collect our in-house loans, our loans here at Boston College, which include the Perkins loan. I don't believe any of the attendees today have a Perkins from BC, but we've been using this company for years. And unfortunately, I don't know whether it was COVID fever or whatever happened down there, but they sent the wrong email, obviously. And that led you all to believe, I think primarily that they were spam or junk, and you were afraid of it. They do work for us. Please go online if you have not done so already. It is safe, believe me, they do have good security. Log in and complete the online exit interview. That I beg you to do, and I apologize for all of the confusion. I had them send another email, but they screwed that up as well. So I can't account for it. I'm just very dismayed by it. So definitely complete the online portion of the exit interview. And today's session is, of course, just a bonus of information. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to talk about the stages of a loan, just so everybody's clear, and you may or may not know this. So you're currently in an enrolled status because you're still in school, obviously. We know that you'll be getting out in May. And we are required to report your enrollment, or when you're not enrolled, to the federal government. Every month, Boston College sends out what we call the National Clearinghouse Report. It's electronic, it goes out, it says that you're in school here, or in fact, you're not any longer in school here. So we are required to do this, and this is so the servicing companies will all know about what your status is, where you are. If you were to continue on at another university after you left BC, and you're enrolled in, Penn State or something, they also are sending out an electronic file every month, after drop ed, specifically when you first register for a semester, so that everything becomes completely up to date and everybody knows what's going on with the status of your loan. So you are considered as an enrolled student right now, as long as you are attending a university half-time or greater. And I'm sure most of you are in that status at this point. The next period you'll go into is called a grace period. So step 2 is going into the grace period. And the grace period does vary. We'll get to that in a second. And that probably will not kick in for you, this graduating class, until the suspension is over. The suspension that's been issued by President Trump and previously, and now President Biden as well, has been extended to September 30th, 2021. So it's almost as if you haven't graduated yet until then. So you've kind of got a bonus, which is good, primarily due to COVID, but it's certainly something that you can take advantage of during this time. I don't expect your grace periods to kick in until from October 1 onward for the period of time that's called the grace. And that's assuming that the government does not extend out the suspension. That still could happen. We have to wait and see how this goes. During a grace period, no payments are required. However, with Stafford loans and Grad Plus, interest usually still accrues. The suspension that I spoke of with the federal government extends to the 30th of September. Yes, no payments need to be made, and it does not accrue interest during this time period. So you are really in a golden stage right now as graduates and as loan recipients. So this is really unprecedented. The third stage, once your grace period of 6 months is over, you will go into what we call repayment, and you'll stay in this repayment phase for the eternity of the loan until, in fact, it's paid in full. Next slide, please. For Grad Plus loans, there technically is no grace period. This is confusing to people, but you can ask for by contacting your servicing company, Nelnet, Great Lakes, whatever the company is, and ask for a post-enrollment deferment. They will give it to you no problem. They do this all the time. So when the law was written to issue direct Grad Pluses, and a few years ago, someone literally neglected to put in the provision for a grace period. But they certainly honor this request for a post-enrollment deferment. What that will do, you ask for 6 months, it will align your loans so that they all become due at the same time period, because you do get a 6-month grace period on direct subsidized or unsubsidized loans. For those of you that have gone to school before and have had subsidized loans undergrad, and you did not come right into BC for your graduate work, you went out in the world and worked maybe a year or two, you've already used up your 6-month grace period on your undergrad loans. This is important for you to note. So normally those loans, undergrad, would kick right into gear when you leave BC in May. They would notify you that you have 45 days and you need to begin paying. That will probably not happen, of course, because we are in this unusual moment in time with this suspension, the federal government suspension. So your undergrad loans are being suspended as well as these new loans that you have at BC. But you will get a grace period on your new debt, which is the debt that you've now borrowed at Boston College. If the suspension should end in September and you have a 6-month grace period for the next 6 months after September on your new debt, you certainly could contact your company and ask them to give you a forbearance or to defer out until everything aligns and all loans are due at the same period of time. So the government companies that work for the government are very amenable to helping you out during these stages. And you'll be at that point looking for jobs and hopefully seeking employment, relocating perhaps, and getting yourself settled and ready to pay. And that's exactly what a grace period is for. It is for you, a time period for you to get ready to begin to take on the burden of making repayment. For those of you that may have an undergrad Perkins loan, and maybe some of you do, maybe some of you don't, you probably used up a 9-month grace period if you went out to work between your undergrad and coming to study at BC. However, you do get an extra 6-month grace period after every deferment, including student deferments. So your undergrad Perkins loan would get an additional 6-month grace period awarded to you automatically, which is kind of great for your attendance at BC. For those of you that went right from undergrad to grad school without interruption, you will get your 6-month grace period on your undergrad debt when you leave BC after the suspension. So it'll all come out then. And you will not have lost it. It's been postponed for you and you'll use it at this later time. Next slide, please. Okay, so we did talk about, I would like to talk about the CARES Act, which is basically what the government has decided to incorporate all the legality of taking care, because of the coronavirus, taking care of your debt. This is the suspension piece that we've talked about already, and you can get this administrative forbearance without an issue. No interest is accruing, as I said before, and no payments are required during this time period. Perhaps they will extend it, especially that now we're hearing that there's a second wave of COVID coming, which is terrible, of course, and this could impact their extension on this. We don't know what the new administration is going to do. It's wait and see. And therefore, I believe that the grace periods will be delayed, as I just spoke about. Now, here's the thing. While you're being suspended, this is a wonderful time, if you can. Some people will not be able to. I know you're fairly well tapped out at this point at BC. But if you do come into any funds, or you get a tax refund this year, or maybe you got an allocation of funds through the CARES Act and you kind of set it aside, this is a perfect time to make payment on these loans. It's not required. You do not have to, but it is a great time to make a payment. When you make a payment, let's say you had an extra $500 kind of laying around or something, and you want to say, well, gee, I'm in for suspension. I don't have to make that payment. It would be in your best interest to actually put that money towards your loans. The money will first go through and pay off any interest that accrued prior to March 13th, 2020. And as you know, unsubsidized loans accrue interest from the moment that they are dispersed, including any undergrad debt that you may have. So if you decide to put your $500 in to your servicing company, go online to their company website, you're going to log into your account, make a payment, $500 electronic payment. It will first go to that old interest, which is good because there won't be any capitalization. If it's just Boston College loans that we're talking about, that also will go to any of the interest that accrued prior to March 13th, 2020. The remainder of the money will go to a principal, and it will decrease the amount of loan debt that you have. Ultimately, that will be in your best interest because you'll pay interest going forward in your repayment stage on less principal borrowed. Always you want to pay off principal whenever you can. So it's a good time to do that. It is certainly not mandatory. I'm just giving you a tip. Next slide, please. So I do recommend, every year I recommend this to all of our graduates. You want to be on recurring auto payment. It's referred to in the industry as automatic clearinghouse, ACH. I'm sure you do it for some of your other bills, perhaps your Visa bill, maybe your electric bill. And you can automatically have the payment sucked out of your checking or savings account. I do encourage this because, number one, it will keep you on track. You'll never be late with a payment. If you're out traveling or you're busy or you're on a vacation and you forgot to go in and manually make that electronic payment that month, again, you stand a chance of being late, and you don't want to be late on student loan debt. They report to the credit bureau. We are required to report to the credit bureau every month, every 30 days. And this could be detrimental to you. I get calls all the time from graduate students trying to buy a house and they've missed a payment or two. That doesn't mean you're a horrible person, but it does affect the credit score, as you know. So recurring auto payment gives the authority to your servicing company to basically extract the payment. You give them the account number, your routing number, and you set it up. If they tell you your minimum installment per month is $250, then you want to set up the $250 so that it's taken out. You usually get to pick a day of the month that will work for you based upon when you get your paycheck, which you can guide that at your company. They will also give you a 0.225%, excuse me, my voice, 0.25% decrease on your interest rate for signing up an automatic draft. It's not huge. It's not going to certainly put money in your bank, but you know what? Every little bit helps. So they're encouraging you by doing this little incentive to sign up for auto draft. Can you make an overpayment, extra payments, prepayment? Yes, you can do all of the above. And again, I encourage you to do that. You can pay during a grace period. You can pay now. Any payment you make now while you're enrolled will go to any interest that's accrued on the loan first and then go to principal. So if you would like to overpay, you can do that. Instead of, I used an example of $250. If the company says to you, you have to make $250 a month, you say, okay, but you know, you got a good job, you have funds set aside perhaps, and you can afford, maybe you're living at home and you decided to live at home for a year and not pay your parents' rent or whatever is going on, but you can afford more and you'd like to sign up for $350 a month, you can certainly do that. You can never pay less than the $250 unless it's approved by the servicing company and you've worked that out. And we will talk about options when that can occur, but you can certainly pay more. So if you set up your auto draft for $350, the extra $100 every single month will pay down principal on your loan debt and thereby shortening the life of the loan, and less interest will be paid in the long run. These loans are calculated on interest on whatever the balance is at the time they calculate. So every time, just like a Visa card, every time you make a payment and your balance goes down, interest will be less calculated that month. So can you make extra payments? Yes, at any time. If you got some graduation money, you got a sign-on bonus at a company where you're working, you can go in and say, yes, I think I'll take this extra $1,000. Perhaps it's your tax refund. You can certainly take that $1,000 and make that payment. I would encourage those kinds of payments to be on a separate day than the recurring auto payment that comes out monthly. So make sure your auto payment comes out pick another day, go in, log in, and make an e-payment for the $1,000 that you wish to put on the account. You will have the choice to put that $1,000 directly on principal on one of your loans, or split it between two loans, whichever you want to do, thereby dropping down the balance and less interest will calculate. Anytime you can put extra money directly to principal, I would highly recommend that. You can prepay and overpay these loans. So overpayment is paying over the amount, extra payments we just talked about. And if you just want to pay it off someday, you got an inheritance or something occurred in your life where you came into the money, maybe you won the lottery, you can certainly prepay these without penalty at any time. So absolutely, anytime you can send money in, do so. Next slide. Okay, I'd like to talk about something called capitalization. So the government does this. This is how they make money. So the reason why I teach this is because I'd rather not give them any more money than you're already going to give them. If in this example, you borrowed $18,000, and this is just an example, obviously, each of you will find out how much you borrowed by logging into your servicing company's website. We use an example, $18,000, and during the time, it's accrued interest while you've been in school. That's what Stafford loans do. That's what Grad Plus loans do. And Grad Plus, of course, is at a little bit higher interest rate than your Stafford loan. So during the time, you can go look in your servicing in your account in your servicing company, let's say Great Lakes that I used earlier for an example, and see that, oh, I've accrued $1,000. I would encourage you at any time during your grace period or during the suspension, as we talked about earlier, pay down or pay off the accrued interest because it's in your best interest to do so. When you come out of your grace period, eventually after the suspension, that $1,000, if you did not pay it down or pay it off, they will add it to what you borrowed. Your principal was $18,000. They will take the $1,000. They will add it to the nine and making it $19,000. Now the balance has gone up, and you will be charged interest on that balance as you go forward making your repayment. So that's how they're getting money. They're kind of paying it twice. Interest accrued, and they're slapping it on and now making that principal. This is called capitalization of interest, and they do this at several times during your period of repayment, especially if you've done at the end of grace period, and they'll also do it again if you take out a forbearance or a deferment. They will do a capitalization at the end of that period. Be aware, always pay down if you can. If you can't, that's all right, don't stress over it. You're probably straight out at this point, and it's COVID, and you're trying to get jobs. Don't worry about it, let it roll in. It's just part of the big picture. Next slide. If you can't pay, the key piece is protect your credit. As we talked about earlier, credit is so vitally important, and it will become more and more important as you become contributors to the workforce, and you'll want to buy things, of course. If you cannot pay, don't just ignore it. Contact your loan servicing company and tell them, I'm having a difficult time. I just got diagnosed with XYZ disease, or I have COVID, God forbid. And I'm not able to make payment at this time. I'm still looking for a job. They will absolutely allow you to request a forbearance or a deferment. These may also accrue interest while they're going on, but it will protect your credit. It's not detrimental to you in any way. The government is equipped to give you remedial assistance whenever you ask. So you just have to ask. You might have to fill out, I don't know, a form or two, and then they'll put it on and give you a 6-month forbearance and see where you are at the end of the forbearance. So take advantage of absolutely of all of this remedial help that you can get should you have some difficulty and not be able to make your payment. Don't just let it fall off track, and then you'll be behind and behind and behind and behind, and then it's tough to crawl out of that. Next slide, please. Income-driven repayment plans. These are also out at the FSA website, studentaid.gov. You can find out about them. You can even apply for them out there on that website. and they will absolutely send the form that you'll fill out online directly to your servicer. What are these? These are payment plans that are designed by the federal government for people that are having difficulty making their required minimum installment. We talked a little bit about the $250 per month. I just kind of pulled that out of the hat. If you have a monthly installment that you really cannot afford based upon your debt and income ratio, so if you've got high debt and you don't have high income to go with that, you may find yourself struggling. You can apply for an income-driven payment plan, and that's an umbrella term of covering all of these types that you see here on the screen. So income-driven is umbrellaed, and these are the various types of payment plans. Apply for them, absolutely. If you need help, you contact your loan servicing company, you tell them, I cannot meet this minimum installment. They'll ask you to fill out some information based upon your income and other debt that you have that they may or may not be aware of. And you'll fill that out and they will give you either an income-based repayment, IBR, ICR, income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, or revised pay as you earn. You will qualify for these and they will absolutely drop down your minimum installment. So you could even pay zero. That is considered to be a legitimate payment. You're not sent out bad at the credit bureau or anything like that. Zero is considered a legitimate payment and it's pretended as if you made that payment, believe it or not. So this will help protect your credit. When you can't make the full payment, at least you can make a lower payment. They will establish what that payment is, and that payment will be in place for you for 12 months. These are renewable every 12 months. Again, the company will contact you most likely through email and ask you to reapply if you need it for the next 12 months. Now, this is not a long-term solution. This is a temporary solution when you're having kind of a bump in the road. You may be on it for a year or two, but you wouldn't want to stay on this long-term, except if you're going to go for public service loan forgiveness. And I'll describe that in detail. These can be very beneficial to you if you're applying ultimately for public service loan forgiveness and looking to get rid of your debt in the end after you've worked 10 years. I'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in just a second. But these are also used for just little bumps in the road. If you don't need it now, that's fine. Tuck this information away. And if you need it 5 years down the road because something happened or whatever, and you do need to take advantage of it, they are here for you to take advantage of. So just contact your servicer and ask them, how in fact do I do this? Or you can go to studentloans.gov and apply for an income-driven payment plan. And they'll tell you which one you qualify for. Next slide, please. So consolidation. Not a lot of people are consolidating right now that I'm aware of because I fill out all the forms for Perkins consolidations here at the school. People probably might consider consolidating their direct loans. What consolidation is a bundling of your loan debt. That's originally how it was determined to be something that you could do to move debt into one bundle. People had years ago, different servicing companies, first of all, not so long ago, they'd own their undergrad loans to Great Lakes, but their graduate loans were Nelnet. And it was like so confusing for everyone. And the government did take great strides and steps to consolidate and keep one loan servicer. Most of you have one loan servicer. But if you happen to not have that, you do have the ability, if you wish, this is a choice, to consolidate your debt under one loan servicing company. And you certainly could do that. If you have loans in your portfolio from years ago that are not direct loans, or you have Perkins loans from older debt from undergrad, and you wish to make them part of the direct loan program so that you can then consolidate them and be available to be written off under public service loan forgiveness, then that's an option that you can use. You can consolidate and pull in your Perkins loans, pull in your undergrad Staffords, and pull in other loans. As long as your loan debt, which most of you will find, have the word direct in the title. So go look, make sure they all say direct Stafford unsubsidized loans or direct unsubsidized Stafford loans, then you're fine for public service loan forgiveness. Anything without the word direct in it will not be subject to the forgiveness, and you'll want to consolidate. If you're in doubt of what to do at any time, please contact myself or Anthony Raymond, who also works in the student loan office. Consult with us. This is what we are here for. We are here to service you. We are here to help you. I don't want any graduates leaving the school conflicted, not knowing what to do. If you're 5 years down the road and you need us, this is what you do. You call BC. We are here to answer questions, either email or phone. We'll absolutely guide you as appropriately as we can. So direct loans and all federal debt can be consolidated. I don't find a lot of people have a need to. You can just pay your loans. You have one servicer. You can set up your minimum installment to come out every month, and your servicing company will distribute your payment to the appropriate amount of loans that you have. The loans can definitely stay single. Even single loans can be put towards the public service loan forgiveness. So there's really not a huge reason to consolidate nowadays. When in doubt, give us a call. We'll talk about it. Next slide. For those of you that may have private loans, this is not federal loans. They cannot be consolidated in the federal domain. You would do a refinance instead. Companies like, just saying as example, SoFi, you might have heard of them. There are plenty of companies out there if you wish to collect all of your private loan debt from undergrad and grad and bundle them. It's just a bundling. Refinance is a word for bundling, basically. But you cannot include federal loans in them. If you did include them, well, you can include them, I shouldn't say you cannot. You can include federal into a refinance, private refinance, but then they're no longer federal loans. I would never recommend that you do this because then you don't have the forbearances and the deferment and the income driven, and you don't have the ability of all that protection and assistance should you need it. So I basically take the stance of keep federal loans in the federal domain. If you do have private loans that you wish to refinance at a lower rate, because rates, of course, are dropping like crazy, or you want to incorporate that in your home financing, that's absolutely fine. Keep your privates in the private, keep your federal on the federal side. How do you know you have a private loan? If you can't remember, pull a credit report. You can usually pull a free credit report at least once a year, no matter what state you live in. So you should absolutely look at that and peruse that and make sure you solidify where your private loans are held and who's going to be contacting you after you graduate. Federal loans will become private debt, as I said, and again, you will not get any of the income-driven payment plans and all of the help that you can get from them, all of the remedial assistance should you need it. Next slide, please. Okay, so forgiveness, a vitally important topic, especially for all of you. Many of you might be working in the field of social work, as I understand it. Some of you may be doing macro work, probably would not be eligible for this, but I can't say for sure. So here's the criteria. If you have the word, as I said before, direct has to precede your loans. Direct Stafford, direct Grad Plus, you're good, okay? This is some of the things that you would not be taking advantage of, not going to be teachers, but there is a teacher cancellation for Stafford loans. But for you, the school, social work and counseling is your primary concern. If you have old Perkins loans from undergrad or any other school, any other university, and you're doing social work, it doesn't matter when you took out the loans. What matters is the job you're doing. If you work in a public or private not-for-profit and you're assisting children ages 3 to 21 at risk of abuse and neglect, high-risk children, such as DSS, those kinds of counseling situations, you may be eligible for your Perkins loan for the social work counseling that's listed here. For every year that you work in that field, full-time, your college or university that still owns your Perkins loan, the university owns those loans, each university, talk to them about giving you a forgiveness. You turn in your paperwork every year and they'll chop off a piece of your Perkins loan. So take advantage of that. If you have Perkins loans, contact your university that owns the loan and make sure that you're availing yourself of the social work forgiveness on a year by year by year basis. After 5 years, does not have to be sequential. After 5 years, you'll owe no Perkins loan. It'll all be wiped out. So that's a beautiful, beautiful benefit to the Perkins program. Stafford, okay, we're going to move on to the next one, next screen. Public service loan forgiveness is what will be critical for you to know about as social workers in the field. Here's how it works. You must have, first of all, be working in a public, private, not-for-profit. Now notice it says public or private. So it can be either one. Even though the title of this forgiveness is public service loan forgiveness, you can work in either. Normally, these places will have a qualification of a 501c3 status. That is a Department of Revenue not-for-profit. It's paperwork that a not-for-profit has to file with the IRS, basically. So they also, there's other forms that they can file. I don't know the names of them for not-for-profit status. So check and see that the entity where you're working is in fact not-for-profit. Get a copy of their not-for-profit status. You must have the word direct. I've said this several times during the presentation. Direct has to be in the title of your loan. What if it isn't in the title of your loan? You're going to consolidate it and convert it to a direct loan. Easy breezy. It's just terminology. That's all you're doing. So once your loans are all direct, if they're all direct, you're good to go. What I would suggest is that you apply for one of the income-driven payment plans. And we talked about these. Income-based, IBR is the most often used one, but ICR, income contingent, pay-as-you-earn, revitalized pay-as-you-earn. Why? These loans are designed to be paid back in 10 years. And for some of you, that's a daunting amount of money that you've borrowed to spread just over 10 years. If you were to pay every installment on time, the minimum installment that the company tells you have to pay, the loan would be paid off in 10 years. For public service loan forgiveness, we do not want the loan paid off. You wouldn't have anything to forgive. You have to meet all this criteria before the government will wipe out whatever debt is left. So it behooves you to get into a income-driven repayment plan where they drop your payment down for 12 months, renew it again the next 12 months, and so forth and so on during your entire 10-year period that you're paying this back. You have to make 120 installments. That equals 10 years of repayment, by the way. You have to make 120 installments. You have to have a direct loan, and you have to have worked in a public-private not-for-profit. So that's 3 things that need to take place. Once those are all accomplished, they will wipe out whatever debt is remaining on the loan. So it's your best interest not to pay the full minimum installment that your company tells you. Your best bet is to get on an income-driven payment plan. Now, this is based upon income to debt ratio. So again, you fill out a form. Again, you want to do this as soon as possible, as soon as you have income, as soon as you start your jobs. Make sense? You have to document. I would document myself. If I were you, I would keep all of my documentation. I would keep copies of everything. Copies of the public-private not-for-profit status of the company that you work for. You may work for a company for 3 years, and then you may switch companies. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. You can interrupt your 10-year repayment time period on public service loan You could work 3 years, you might stop, you might have a baby, you may take a year off, you may go back to the field, become a social worker again at a new company. You just want to make sure that when you worked for 12 months at a company, you get a form filled out, and there's forms on the FSA website, certification forms. They take your form, put it in front of your HR department, and make sure they sign off that you completed 12 months of employment. Keep copies. Start a 3-ring binder. Stick all your stuff in plastic sleeves and keep it. Keep your tax return in the binder, because every year when you apply for an income-driven payment plan to be renewed, those companies, Great Lakes, Nelnet, they're going to ask you for a copy of your tax return. So keep everything pertaining to this, every documentation you have. Put your job description of what you're doing for this company in a plastic sleeve in a notebook. I've been teaching this since 2008, when this law became a law, public service forgiveness. I was hoping that a ton of people would get this, mostly our graduates, of course, in 2018, and that did not happen, sadly. From what I've read and what I understand through industry publications, Fed Loan Servicing, which is the primary servicing company currently in charge of public service loan forgiveness, fairly well mismanaged a lot of these applications. Now the government is going to take steps to go back and look at people who have applied who were denied it. So I'm just saying, protect thyself. Take responsibility right now to make sure that you have all the documents in place for each place you worked. Remember, the place you work today could be a McDonald's building 5 years from now. So there may be nobody there to go and have sign off paperwork and everything for you if you didn't get it at the time you were working there. So as you go along, get and retain your documentation and put it in a safe place, and make sure that you have it as a backup. You do not have to turn all of this in. The certification, I think you're turning in yearly now, but anything else you don't have to turn in until the 10th year. None of this will happen until you've reached the 3 things. Not-for-profit, working for 10 years, full-time, no part-time, no self-employment. Keep that in mind. Some of you go out and start your own firms and become social workers on your own private practice. You have to be on the income driven because it's in your best interest. If your income should increase and you find that your income driven payment plan is now up a little, you were paying $100 a month, now they want a little bit more, 175. You're just paying more into it. There's nothing you can do about that. You pay more. If you start to make a lot of money or you get married, they do consider joint income. They also consider your spouse's loan debt. When they determine income to debt ratio, they consider both incomes if you're filing jointly on your tax return, and they also consider both people's student loan debt as well. So it gets a little tricky when you get married and file jointly. There's a lot of ins and outs to this, and there's a lot of information out on the Student Financial Aid website. Certainly read it, digest what you can, and if you have questions, again, always feel free to contact the Student Loan Office, myself, or Anthony Raymond, who works with me. It's complex, and I hope you get it. Next slide, please. These are some resources. We've already talked about studentaid.gov. Also the BC Loan website. We've put a lot of stuff out there as well. If you need us, borrower@bc.edu. We answer this daily. We answer the phone line daily. We will get back to you. We are here for you, and we absolutely want you to have the best and most thorough information at all times. Next slide. This is my contact information. Anthony also works with me. And again, how to get a hold of us. This is the Borrow phone number. Call us, leave a message, identify yourself, Eagle number, give us a good phone number to get back to you on, and we certainly will get back to you. We'll probably turn this over to questions. Chatting, you put questions into the hopefully you put them in. And as you came across questions along the way, and I think Chris is going to let me know what those questions are.
Yes, so Kathy, we have a number of questions that have come in already. So the first one was, why does the exit interview ask for 4 references? Most of the people don't want to call about a loan they don't have.
Right, exactly. It's kind of standard operating procedure by the great old federal government. The government demands that we do an exit interview. We have a choice of you're doing it on the federal website or doing it with ECSI. Currently, we're using ECSI. They probably will never get called, to be honest with you, because this is data that's going to remain at ECSI. So if you need to put down a neighbor, I wouldn't feel badly about that at all. They probably will not get called. It is what it is. Put down as many as you can and see if the exit is accepted. And it should be.
Kathy, the next one was just clarifying on the suspension that interest is not accruing during this period?
Correct. Interest from the period of March 13th to current and will go on until September 30th, 2021. It's not accruing interest. So the loans you, for instance, were dispersed this year at BC, your last year in the fall and in the spring, those are not accruing interest. So the cutoff was March 13th, 2020. Anything received, dispersed to you prior to that is absolutely still was accruing interest at that point, but it has stopped.
So then there was a question about, can you choose which loan you pay off first when you're paying them off, as they would want to pay the unsub first, obviously?
Yeah, so essentially, as grad students, most of your loans are unsub. You might have subsidized loans. If you look in your portfolio out on studentaid.gov, you might have subsidized when you were undergrad. That's quite probable and possible. But likely you do not have subsidized here in Gradland. So both the Grad Plus and the Stafford are generally unsubsidized. It's very unusual. There's a very small window of some subsidized. Obviously, you want to pay off the unsub first. And if you make a payment to your company, it will always go to whatever interest has accrued, and that will generally be in the unsubsidized loan area, and that will be Grad Plus. You can direct your payment now during a grace period or during the suspension to go to a specific loan. It'll go to the interest of the Grad Plus loan first, then it'll pay off. You can say, I want it to go this way. You can call your company and say, I'm going to make a $500 payment and I want it to go to specifically this loan. Get rid of the higher interest rate loan always first. First interest, then principal. That's probably your Grad Plus. So consider that first. And simply ask them, how best should I do this? Is there a way to do this, so that it's exacting the way I want it by using your website?
Okay. Most of the next ones are going to be in the forgiveness, as you can imagine. So does paying off interest before the grace period affect your eligibility for the 10-year program?
Not at all. Not at all. Nope. You have to have debt. That's all you have to do is have debt. How much debt? It's up to you. Normally, if you were doing the 10-year public service loan forgiveness, I would not recommend paying off the interest, because if you ultimately think you're really going to make it, and 10 years is a long time, especially for those doing clinical work, that can be very taxing. It's very difficult. Sometimes you all get burnt out. I understand that completely, being the nature of the beast. So if you really think you're going to stick it out for 10 years, why pay off the interest? Because you don't really care. It's all going to lump in, it's going to capitalize, and whatever's left is going to get paid. If you're not sure you're going to make it, okay, so somewhere along the line, maybe you drop out and you're not going to do it. At that point, you can just put a chunk of money down on your payment. So normally people that think they're going to do public service would not go pay off their interest early. But it's a choice.
And then Kathy, the 120 payments, do they have to make those without missing one in order to qualify, or you just have to make 120 payments?
If you miss one, it's not detrimental. It's just, it's counting. It's going to wait and count. There'll be times in your life, let's say you were working 3 years and you made those payments, but then you took a forbearance because you took a year off or something, legitimately. Maybe you had a child or something and you wanted to stay home with your child for a year. That's fine. During that forbearance period, it's not detrimental that you're not making a payment. But any payments made are counted. So they do count until they get to 120. And you may not reach all of that at the same time. You may get to the 10 years of working, but not have made 120 installments yet. So it's only when they all align, sort of the planets align, do you get the benefit.
Okay, and then the next one was, maybe you can explain a little bit, Kathy, about the 120 payments. Can they be making more than what is that? Can they be making a payment more than what's required during those 120s? I think the explanation of why you don't want to do that is important. But you can make payments.
If you make 120,
greater.
and then what happens?
No, it's 100. If you're making individual amounts, on the individual amounts, you could pay more if you wanted to, correct? And it still qualifies, but there's reasons why you don't.
But you'd only get there quicker on the payments. So for instance, we said 120 installments equals 10 monthly installments, 10 years worth of monthly installments. They only expect a payment monthly. If you decided to pay 2 payments a month, I think this is where this question is going. 2 payments would expedite you, and yes, they would be counted, but why do that? And also, you know, you're going to get to 120 installments quicker than probably your 10 years of working. So it's only when everything, all those goals have been achieved, do you get the forgiveness. And then you'll have paid more in. You'll have doubled what you pay in. So why do that? You want them to forgive the most amount of debt. You want to pay into your account as little as possible over the 10 years so that there's lots to forgive and erase away. Does that make sense?
I think so. So the next one was regarding the income driven repayment and the 5 years. So if you were to be paying the 5 years under the public service and you get a raise or married, and do you just not qualify now, or does that public loan forgiveness force you to stay under a certain income?
That's a great question, whoever asked that, by the way. So let's just take this from the top. Let's say you get out of BC and you get a job in a public sector situation and you work 5 years and then you become, you know, the vice president of the corporation or whatever, and you get this sudden raise in income, and you now no longer qualify for one of the income-driven payment plans, which can happen. Does that kick you out of public service loan forgiveness? Does it kick you out of the track in your goal to attain that? No, it does not. You will revert to your standard payment amount way back when you left BC that you would have been paying monthly had you not applied for income driven. So let's take perhaps $250 was your original amount that your company Great Lakes told you you need to pay. But you since applied for income driven for 5 years. Now at the 50-year mark, you became the vice president and you no longer qualify on your recertification, your yearly recertification for that lower amount. They will just revert you back to the 250. So you'll be paying more in than you would have liked to for the next 5 years of your 10-year journey, but you'll still get the forgiveness.
Okay, the next one is also regarding the public loan forgiveness. The student didn't go to BC right from undergrad and started working and have been doing public service for 3 years already. will my 10 years on my grad loan start when I graduate from BC or from the date of your undergrad?
Yes, great question. So let's take that one. Undergrad, let's say you've got, 4 loans or whatever. They are direct loans. You were working, you'll get credit for those loans on that working. Your BC loans, your clock starts separately. They're on 2 different tracks. So you're going to be following, and on one of the grouping of loans undergrad, you're going to get to your 10-year clearly when you get a new job now after leaving BC. You're going to get there quicker on those loans. And that debt, that grouping of undergrad debt will get hopefully forgiven quicker than your new debt. So you're on 2 different tracks. Do not combine them. Do not listen to anybody and consolidate, because that will start your clock from now. And you've already got this behind you as an advantage. So never consolidate, whoever you are. Call me if you need to.
So Kathy, the next student completed the exit interview and got another email saying they needed to complete it or they won't get their diploma. Will
Yeah.
they get some sort of confirmation that they have done everything they need to?
Yes, if you know you did it, don't worry about it. That was just to clarify. People were so confused, thought ECSI was a scam, phishing company, etc. That email should have gone out last week. It's a nightmare down there. Don't worry about it. We will let you know in our next communication to you if you still have not done it. So just ignore that. That was just to clarify that ECSI is legitimate. If you know you did it, we're good.
And then one student wasn't aware of the exit interview. They thought this was the exit interview.
That's okay. It's online. They can email me, rosa@bc.edu. I will send you instructions on how to complete the online.
Let's see. All of my undergrad loans are serviced by Ancient. Will my grad loans be transferred to them, or will they be with BC servicer Navient?
What was the name of it?
Ancient, ANCIENT.
Oh, Ascent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said the BC loans are Navient.
Yes, that was the question. Will
Yeah,
they be with
they were.
will they be with one or will they be split?
They shouldn't be split. That's unusual. Contact me. Very unusual. So they should all be under one. It could be that if you had undergrad way back and you've been working for many, many years and now you're taking out new loans, it could be the distance between your undergrad loans and your grad loans. But that is a case where you could consolidate them. But before you do, speak with me. I'd like to look at them and make sure before we jump into consolidation on that.
If I was to work full-time for a nonprofit and then do some private practice 5 hours a week, and would that still qualify for the 10-year program?
The nonprofit full-time qualifies you. Your private practice does not. To the best of my knowledge, because you're self-certifying on that, and there's no part-time in this anyway. So the other one covers you. You can certainly do the private practice as well.
And then I think one last question. Well, we got one more. To complete their requirements, do they just do the online exit, or do they need to schedule a one-on-one interview as well?
No, just do your online this year. This was to take place of this is sort of the one-on-one, if you will.
And then they have a student has 2 different loans, Grad Plus and a direct unsubsidized. Will they be paying those both off at the same time or one after the other?
Nope, they're concurrent. You'll make your $250 payment or $500 payment, and the company will distribute it to both loans.
Okay, at this point, I think we've answered all the questions that have been asked.
Great. Well, you've been a great group. I really appreciate the feedback. I hope I did okay. I hope you could understand me. I'm here for questions. This is what I love to do for a living, is to help you all. So go forth, graduate, and good luck. Thank you.